Have you ever wondered what happens when someone reaches the pinnacle of fame and success only to discover it doesn't bring true happiness? Jim Carrey, one of Hollywood's biggest stars, faced this harsh reality. His life is a story of glory and shadows, a quest for acceptance and ultimately liberation. Behind the laughter he gave us was a man struggling to find himself in a world of illusions. Welcome to another night where mysteries never sleep. I am Midnight, and this is 7 Nights. Today, we'll unravel the intriguing journey of Jim Carrey, an artist who challenged not just Hollywood, but the very idea of who he was meant to be. For many, Hollywood is the ultimate destination for dreams. For Jim Carrey, it was more than that. It was the redemption he believed he needed. Now think about this. You reach the place you've always dreamed of, only to realize it's nothing like you imagined. Mind-boggling, isn't it? Marketed as the land where talent thrives and success is inevitable, Hollywood soon revealed itself to be a gilded trap. With each opportunity promising to be the breakthrough, Carrey felt the weight of acceptance that always seemed just out of reach. He became addicted to chasing validation, dependent on the promises of a bright future. But the city of stars has its dark side, and Carrey discovered that fame and fortune were often just facades hiding emptiness. Hollywood embraced him only to discard him, leaving him caught between desire and disappointment. Carrey's journey began with promises echoing like a mantra. You will be a great star. But the reality was a series of closed doors. Even so, he refused to give up, even when success seemed more like a mirage than a reality. Hollywood was relentless with those who didn't fit its mold. With his unique approach to physical and expressive comedy, Carrey often seemed like an enigma to the industry. For every opportunity he earned, there was a rejection reminding him how fleeting the powerful's favor could be. Deep down, he knew Hollywood's acceptance came at a cost, but he was willing to pay it, until he realized the price was his own identity. You know that saying, sell your soul to the devil. In Jim's case, the devil was a Hollywood contract, and the check had a lot of zeros. Even when he finally began reaping the rewards of his persistence, Carrey realized something unsettling. With every achievement, the emptiness inside seemed to grow. He reached the spotlight and generated billions in box office revenue, but in the silence of lonely nights, doubt consumed him. Was this what it meant to win? To be recognized by strangers while his own soul cried out for something deeper? Hollywood taught him that fame was a dangerous currency, one that bought applause but didn't fill the spirit. This contrast between outward brilliance and inner darkness was the first sign that Hollywood's promise was an illusion. At the height of his success, Carrey was accompanied by a sense of disconnection. He was hailed as a comedic genius but felt like an imposter in his own life. Every red carpet and award show was a reminder that the world saw him in a way he didn't recognize. The illusion of the big dream Hollywood sold was more suffocating than he had imagined. The quest for acceptance had left deep scars, and he began questioning everything: who he was, what truly mattered, and why nothing ever felt enough. The stage that was supposed to be his triumph became his gilded cage. The mystery of Hollywood isn't just in its success stories, but in the untold narratives of loneliness and disconnection. For Carrey, success didn't bring answers, only more questions. It's the moment you realize the mountain's peak doesn't offer the view you were promised. It's more like a thick fog. Why did fulfillment seem so distant, even at the height of his career? He began to see that the promise of happiness was built on a foundation of smoke and mirrors. The more he tried to grasp what had been promised to him, the further he moved away from himself. The industry that promised so much was, in reality, a grand illusion. Before becoming an icon, Jim Carrey was just a boy trying to survive. Growing up in a family struggling to keep a roof over their heads, he knew deprivation early on. When his family lost everything, they were forced to live in a van, relying on temporary jobs to get by. Young Jim found an escape from hardship in humor. He acted like a clown to distract his parents from daily struggles, trying to coax laughter out of chaos. But behind that comic mask was a boy carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. Carrey's first encounter with failure was devastating. At age 15, performing at a comedy club, he was mercilessly booed. The audience crushed him with sneering laughter and jeers. For any teenager, that moment could have spelled the end of a dream. For Jim, it was a turning point. He decided to step away from comedy temporarily, not because he had given up, but because he knew he needed to grow. That period of retreat was a necessary pause to understand that failure was an inevitable part of the journey. When Carrey returned to the stage, he was different. There was something more determined in his eyes, a spark that said he wouldn't accept defeat as a full stop. At 17, he began paving his path, still in Toronto, achieving small victories. His talent for impressions became his calling card, even though many saw him only as just another impressionist. But he knew he had something unique, something that set him apart, and he was ready to fight for it. The poverty he endured shaped his resilience. While other stars emerged with stories of familial support and resources, Carrey rose from a place of need. He learned to create opportunities where there were none. Living in a car, working to help his family, and facing failure head-on didn't break him. On the contrary, it gave him the strength to persist. Carrey knew adversity was his greatest teacher. Adversity wasn't just an external circumstance, but also an internal battle. He had to conquer his own fears and insecurities. Every time he stepped on stage, he faced not just the audience, but also his inner demons. He knew he couldn't hide behind impressions forever. If he wanted to be taken seriously, he needed to find his own voice. This internal struggle became the foundation of his career. And though the journey was arduous, he was determined to turn his pain into fuel. After rising again in the comedy circuit, Jim Carrey began shaping his unique style, but it wasn't enough to avoid obstacles. He tried to join the iconic Saturday Night Live 3 times, being rejected each time. Each failed attempt was a blow to his confidence, but also a reminder that he didn't fit the traditional mold. While other comedians were praised for their storytelling through jokes, Carrey was a master of physical comedy and exaggeration, something the industry didn't yet know how to value. He was ahead of his time, but paid the price for being different. These rejections might have made anyone else give up, but Carrey saw them as an opportunity to reinvent himself. He knew it wasn't a lack of talent, but a matter of timing and acceptance. He decided to refine his craft and dove into the comedy circuit, taking his style to new heights. Each performance became a testing ground where he experimented until he found the perfect balance between impersonation, physical humor, and authenticity. He understood that his boundless energy was an advantage, not a weakness, and was ready to use it as his trademark. Behind the curtain, there was a man hungry for success, but also someone beginning to see the cost of his pursuit. He studied the moves of other comedians and watched how the industry treated those who dared to innovate. Although he was eager to prove himself, Carrey began to realize it wasn't enough to be funny. He needed to capture the right attention. The rejection from big names like Lorne Michaels, the creator of SNL, wasn't the end, but a reminder that he would have to open his own doors. When the opportunity finally came, it was through something unexpected in living color. Created by the Wayans brothers, the show provided a space where his eccentricity could shine. The opportunity arose because Damon Wayans recognized his talent in a minor film, Earth Girls Are Easy. Carrey was introduced to Keenan Ivory Wayans, and the rest was history. He finally found an environment where he could explore his creativity without limits, transforming his chaotic energy into comedic gold. It was there that he began shaping what would become the foundation of his future career. Even as he built his reputation, Carrey knew the struggle wasn't over. He understood the entertainment world was fickle, and that acceptance was as fleeting as laughter. However, his determination was stronger than ever. He began to believe that he wouldn't just survive in this world, but dominate it. What started as a desperate attempt to prove his worth was slowly transforming into something deeper, a journey to discover how far his art could take him. In Living Color was the stage where Jim Carrey began to show his true potential. The show, known for its provocative and innovative humor, was fertile ground for Carrey's unrestrained energy. He quickly became one of the show's stars, creating unforgettable characters like the insane Fire Marshal Bill. While other comedy shows followed predictable formulas, In Living Color dared to go further, and Carrey knew this was his chance to stand out in a space that embraced his unconventional creativity. He finally found an audience that understood and valued his originality. However, even in an environment that celebrated differences, Carrey knew he was an outsider. He was one of the few white actors in a predominantly Black and Latino cast, which meant he had to continuously prove his worth. But rather than be intimidated, he used this as fuel for his performances. With every sketch, he raised the bar, delivering energy that bordered on the surreal. His physical humor and exaggerated facial expressions captured the attention not only of the audience but also of critics, who finally began to notice his talent. Success on In Living Color not only launched his mainstream career, but also prepared him for the next phase, film. It was there that he began to experiment with more complex and multidimensional characters, even within a comedic format. He had no fear of exposing himself completely on screen, something that would become his trademark. Yet, while the audience laughed, Carrey began to notice something curious. He still felt he hadn't fully earned the respect he desired. The show also marked a transition for Carrey, who began questioning the limits of humor and art. He saw In Living Color as a safe space to explore his creativity, but he knew the world outside that stage was far less forgiving. With each performance, he wondered if he was merely being tolerated or truly accepted. This doubt haunted him for a long time, but also pushed him to seek more. Carrey wanted more than to be funny. He wanted to be recognized as an artist. As Carrey's fame grew, he began to stand out as a leading figure in 1990s comedy. Yet, even at the peak of his success, he never lost sight of what In Living Color represented, a springboard to something greater. For Carrey, the show wasn't just a job, it was a validation that he had something unique to offer. And while he knew the journey ahead would be long, In Living Color was the turning point that showed him he was on the right path. Despite all the victories the show brought him, Carrey knew the real challenge was just beginning. He would need to take his energy and creativity to the big screen, a territory where failure could mean the end of everything. But he was ready. In Living Color not only gave him a platform, but also taught him that risk was an essential part of success. He was prepared to take the next step, even if it meant facing a new set of challenges. The release of Ace Ventura, Pet Detective in 1994 marked the true turning point in Jim Carrey's career. The film, an absurd comedy about a detective specializing in locating missing animals, gave Carrey the freedom to explore his full arsenal of physical humor, exaggerated facial expressions, and chaotic energy. Even as a risky bet for studios, Ace Ventura became an instant success, transforming Carrey into one of Hollywood's biggest names almost overnight. For audiences, he was a breath of fresh air, for the industry a goldmine. But the success of Ace Ventura wasn't just an achievement, it was also the beginning of intense pressure. Suddenly, Carrey was seen as a guaranteed name for million-dollar box offices, and expectations for his future roles skyrocketed. He followed up this success with The Mask, where he played an ordinary man transformed into a cartoon-like character by a magical mask. The film grossed over $350 million worldwide and solidified Carrey as a star capable of carrying a movie on his own. It wasn't just a commercial hit, it was proof that he had something rare, irresistible charisma and genuine talent. Also in 1994, Carrey starred in Dumb and Dumber, a buddy comedy that achieved massive success. His chemistry with Jeff Daniels and the absurd situations created a formula audiences loved. The film grossed $247 million at the box office, an impressive figure for the time. In less than a year, Carrey had starred in 3 consecutive blockbusters, each different from the other, but all marked by his boundless energy and ability to connect with audiences. He was undoubtedly the king of 1990s comedy, and his star seemed destined to shine even brighter. With success came multi-million-dollar contracts. Carrey became the first actor to receive $20 million for a single film, The Cable Guy. This historic contract placed him on par with icons like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Harrison Ford, but also generated controversy. Critics and audiences began questioning whether he was really worth that much. When the film performed moderately, Carrey's detractors seized the opportunity to criticize him. Despite this, he didn't let the commercial failure shake his confidence. On the contrary, he began exploring bolder, different roles. Even with occasional missteps, Carrey's reign in the 1990s was unquestionable. He wasn't just a comedian, but a cultural phenomenon. His characters, catchphrases, and mannerisms invaded the popular imagination, making him an omnipresent figure. However, beneath the surface, Carrey began to feel the cracks in his reality. Even at the height of success, the emptiness that had accompanied him from the start persisted. Hollywood had given him everything he thought he wanted, but something essential still eluded him. Throughout his meteoric rise, Jim Carrey proved he was more than just a comedian. He was a shapeshifter, someone capable of completely transforming into every role he took on. In The Mask, he brought Stanley Ipkiss to life, a timid character who transforms into a whirlwind of energy and chaos. With special effects amplifying his facial expressions and movements, the film was designed to showcase his unique comedic style. But what few knew was how much Carrey dedicated himself to these transformations, putting his body and soul into each character to ensure they were memorable. This ability to reinvent himself was a direct reflection of his personal life. From a young age, Carrey used humor and imitation as a way to escape harsh realities. He could be anyone except himself. This practice evolved into a powerful tool in his career, allowing him to portray everything from the most ridiculous buffoon to darker, more complex characters. Each transformation was a way to lose himself in someone else's skin, a temporary relief from his own inner struggles. But over time, he began to wonder, who was the real Jim Carrey behind all these masks? The role of Ace Ventura is a clear example of this dedication. While many saw the character as just another light comedy, Carrey viewed it as an opportunity to explore something deeper. He created mannerisms, a distinctive voice, and a screen presence that were as caricatured as they were captivating. Ace Ventura wasn't just a pet detective. He was a personification of everything Carrey could offer: uncontainable energy, unpredictability, and a unique ability to make audiences laugh while wondering how he managed to be so unexpected. But as he moved on to roles like the Riddler in Batman Forever and Lloyd Christmas in Dumb and Dumber, Carrey began to experience something curious. He realized that his characters were celebrated for being extreme, but few recognized the technical and emotional skill required to bring these figures to life. This lack of recognition began to weigh on him, prompting him to seek more dramatic roles, such as in The Truman Show. He wanted to prove, both to audiences and to himself, that he was more than just a funny face. This pursuit of transformation reached new heights when he took on the role in The Cable Guy. By playing a darker, more complex character, Carrey showed he was willing to step out of his comfort zone. However, the audience wasn't ready to see him in this way, and the reception was mixed. Still, for Carrey, the film represented a personal victory. He knew he needed to keep challenging himself, even if it meant disappointing part of his fan base. The mystery behind Carrey's transformations was that the more he immersed himself in his characters, the further he seemed to drift from himself. He was capable of creating entire worlds through his performances, but off-camera, he felt lost. This duality between his public persona and private self would become a recurring theme in his life, culminating in a spiritual journey that would change his outlook on everything he had achieved. The release of The Cable Guy in 1996 marked a polarizing moment in Jim Carrey's career. After establishing himself with light and accessible comedies, the film took a much darker and more unsettling approach. In the role of an obsessive and unbalanced technician, Carrey stepped out of his comfort zone, opting to explore nuances that went beyond physical humor. He was determined to expand his horizons as an actor, but audiences and critics weren't prepared for this change. For many, the dark comedy seemed like a risky detour, and the film was deemed a commercial failure. What few realized at the time was the depth of the character Carrey had built. He delved into human insecurities, the fear of abandonment, and the longing for connection, creating a haunting portrait of a man trapped in his own loneliness. For Carrey, The Cable Guy was an opportunity to show that he could explore the darker side of comedy, blending elements of psychological drama. However, the public's expectations of him as the king of light-hearted humor made the film's reception more a judgment of his career than a fair assessment of the work. The negative reaction was a blow to Carrey, especially as it followed his historic $20 million contract. The press didn't hold back, labeling the salary as an affront to the talent of other more established actors. Carrey was put under a microscope, and his decision to take on a more daring role was seen as arrogance rather than artistic ambition. Even so, he stood firm in his choice, believing that risk was an essential part of his growth as an artist. Despite the controversy, The Cable Guy gained a cult status over the years, and many began to recognize Carrey's courage in taking on such a challenging role at a time when he could have opted for safer choices. He proved he was willing to sacrifice easy approval to follow a path that resonated more deeply with his creative vision. However, this experience also made him realize that Hollywood's acceptance was conditional and fickle. If he didn't deliver what was expected, he would be quickly cast aside. The decision to star in The Cable Guy was more than an artistic experiment. It was a statement. Carrey wanted to show that he wasn't limited to a single genre or style. He knew this transition would be difficult, but was willing to face the consequences. The film, though underestimated at the time, revealed a side of Carrey few knew. An actor willing to explore the darkness and complexity of the human condition, even if it meant risking his reputation. Behind the controversy lay a deeper mystery. How far was Carrey willing to go to break free from the comedian stereotype? The Cable Guy was a milestone in his career, not only for its creative risks, but because it planted the seed of his future transformation. He began questioning the limits of what it meant to be a Hollywood star, a questioning that would lead him to even bolder choices in the future. The release of The Truman Show in 1998 was a defining moment for Jim Carrey. As Truman Burbank, he played a man whose entire life was a carefully constructed lie designed to entertain millions of viewers. The film, while categorized as a dramedy, delved into profound themes of control, freedom, and what it means to live an authentic life. For Carrey, portraying Truman was more than just a role. It was a reflection of his own existence in Hollywood and the realization that he too was, in a way, a puppet in a larger show. Truman was a very different character from anything Carrey had done before. The emotional complexity of the role required him to set aside his trademark antics and explore vulnerability. Audiences watched as Truman slowly realized his reality was a facade, surrounded by actors and artificial settings. This awakening mirrored Carrey's own moment of reckoning, as he began to question the dynamics of control and manipulation in his life and career. He saw that, like Truman, his identity was being shaped by external forces. The impact of The Truman Show was immense, both critically and commercially. The film grossed $264 million worldwide and earned Carrey a Golden Globe for Best Actor in a Drama. More importantly, it proved he could transcend the comedy genre and be taken seriously as an actor. The film's success also highlighted the universality of its theme, the search for freedom. Many identified with Truman, trapped in their own domes, and saw in Carrey a new depth they had never noticed before. The film also raised questions about the role of media and the exploitation of privacy. For Carrey, these themes resonated deeply, as he had experienced firsthand the effects of fame. His personal life was constantly under the spotlight, and he began to question how much of his life was truly his own. Like Truman, he longed to escape the show and find something real. The Truman Show wasn't just a movie for Carrey, it was catharsis. Behind the scenes, Carrey delved deeper into philosophical and spiritual questions. He began questioning not just his career, but his very identity. What did it mean to be Jim Carrey? Who was he beyond the roles he played? These questions echoed in the film's dialogues, where Truman finally musters the courage to leave the dome and face the unknown. For Carrey, The Truman Show was an opportunity to explore these questions on a deep, personal level. The success of The Truman Show marked the beginning of a new phase in Carrey's career, but also highlighted his growing discomfort with the entertainment industry. He realized that Hollywood, like Truman's Dome, was a carefully designed construct meant to manipulate and control. The film planted the seeds of his quest for something greater, a life not defined by fame or external approval, but by the freedom to be himself. After the success of The Truman Show, Jim Carrey began to see more clearly what was wrong in his life. The glory that came from box office hits and awards was temporary, while the feeling of emptiness seemed permanent. Hollywood, with all its pomp and superficiality, was a machine that chewed up individuals and turned them into products. For Carrey, this became unbearable. He started to see the industry as a grand performance, a replica of Truman's Dome, where every move was calculated and freedom was a carefully orchestrated illusion. This epiphany led him to question not just his career, but the values that sustained it. He wondered if he was living to please others or himself. Carrey began to observe how applause, once the validation he sought, had become invisible chains. With every new movie, he felt the pressure to outdo the last, not because he wanted to, but because the industry demanded it. To him, Hollywood was no longer a place of dreams, but a space where authenticity was sacrificed for commercial success. Carrey was not alone in this perception. He saw other stars trapped in the same cycle, seeking acceptance in an industry that required constant reinvention to remain relevant. But unlike many, he chose not to pretend everything was fine. He began to speak openly about the superficiality of success and the trap of living for external validation. He described fame as a drug that, while initially addictive, ultimately corroded the soul. This honesty distanced him from some circles, but for Carrey, it was the first step toward finding something more meaningful. The emptiness he felt also led him to explore his spirituality. I know this part might sound a little zen, but hold on, it's deep stuff. It's like when you turn off the noise to hear what's inside. He began seeking answers in philosophies that went beyond the material world, believing the true meaning of life couldn't be found in Hollywood. This search became evident in interviews and speeches where Carrey spoke about detachment, acceptance, and the importance of living in the present. He believed happiness wasn't in winning awards or breaking box office records, but in finding peace within oneself. Though increasingly disconnected from the Hollywood system, Carrey didn't completely abandon his career. He continued to work, but his roles began to reflect his inner transformation. In films like Man on the Moon, he explored the complexities of identity and the boundaries between reality and performance. These choices were a direct reflection of his own questions. Who was he beyond the roles he played? Hollywood may have given him a platform, but Carrey was determined to use it to question rather than just entertain. Carrey's reflection on Hollywood's emptiness became a profound critique of the industry itself. He saw how the pursuit of success often led to personal destruction. For him, true freedom lay in abandoning the need for acceptance and finding value in something greater than fame. This journey distanced him from the spotlight, but gave him a new perspective. Carrey began to understand that the art that truly mattered wasn't the one that pleased the audience, but the one that allowed the artist to be honest with themselves. Despite his success, Jim Carrey faced internal battles few could see. Depression, a specter that had followed him for years, became more evident as he reached the height of his career. He often described this condition as a feeling of unbearable weight, a void that neither applause nor money could fill. For Carrey, depression was a direct reflection of his disconnection from who he truly was. He realized he had lost himself in the character of Jim Carrey, the star, and needed to rediscover himself. Carrey's spiritual awakening began with a simple question: who am I? He started studying the works of Eckhart Tolle, an author known for his teachings on the power of the present moment. For Carrey, these readings were transformative. He discovered that most of his pain came from living in the past or yearning for the future instead of simply being present. This epiphany was a relief for someone who had spent decades chasing a happiness that always seemed tied to the next project or achievement. In interviews, Carrey began to speak openly about his spiritual journey. He described moments when he felt a deep connection to the universe, as if he had freed himself from the limitations of his own mind. For him, these moments were revelations that happiness didn't depend on success or fame, but on total acceptance of the present. He started meditating regularly, seeking silence, and disconnecting from external pressures. This not only helped him cope with depression, but also redefined what was important in his life. This awakening, however, wasn't easy. Carrey had to confront his own shadows, including the ego that had been nurtured by years of adulation. He realized that fame, while seductive, was a fragile construct. The journey to overcome depression involved dismantling the idea of Jim Carrey as a separate entity and understanding he was part of something greater. He began to see himself as an expression of the universe, a perspective that brought both comfort and mystery. The changes in Carrey were also evident in his art. He began choosing roles that reflected his new worldview, like in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind and The Truman Show. These films explored themes of identity, memory, and reality, resonating with his own experiences. For Carrey, acting was no longer just a way to make a living. It became a means to explore life's deeper questions. Carrey also began sharing his journey with others. He used his platform to talk about mental health, spirituality, and the importance of seeking something beyond appearances. For him, life's true purpose was connection, with others, with nature, and with oneself. Though his journey was still ongoing, he had found a new peace, a light that finally began to shine through the darkness. The death of Catriona White in 2015 marked one of the darkest and most controversial moments in Jim Carrey's life. The young Irish makeup artist, who had been in an on-and-off relationship with Carrey since 2012, was found dead after an overdose of prescription medication. The circumstances of her death quickly garnered attention, and Carrey's name was dragged into the storm, not as a star or comedian, but as a possible accomplice to something terrible. The case escalated when Mark Burton, Catriona's ex-husband, and her mother, Bridget Sweetman, filed lawsuits against Carrey. The allegations were devastating. They claimed Carrey had provided Catriona with the medication that caused her death, using the pseudonym Arthur King to obtain them illegally. Furthermore, allegations arose that he had exposed Catriona to sexually transmitted diseases without informing her. Supposedly signed documents from her, filled with painful messages, painted a portrait of a woman emotionally devastated, describing Carrey as a toxic figure in her life. Carrey vehemently denied the accusations, labeling the lawsuits as attempts at extortion. In public statements, he expressed deep sorrow over Catriona's death, stating that she was a deeply wounded individual facing her own demons. For him, the allegations were an attack on his integrity and the memory of someone he loved. He refused to settle financially with Sweetman and Burton's lawyers, insisting he would fight to clear his name, even if it meant reopening the wounds caused by the tragedy. The case became a legal battlefield. Text messages between CARREY and Catriona were revealed, along with a supposed medical result where CARREY had allegedly used another pseudonym to treat sexually transmitted diseases. CARREY's lawyers argued the evidence had been manipulated and that the lawsuits were financially motivated. However, the public impact was undeniable. CARREY, already grappling with his mental health and questioning Hollywood's emptiness, now had to confront an even darker shadow in his life. In 2018, the lawsuits were dismissed, reportedly with an out-of-court settlement, but the mystery and controversy lingered. The events raised questions about the influence of fame and the complexities of human relationships amid dynamics of power and vulnerability. While CARREY tried to move on, the case left deep scars. The public, divided between supporting or condemning him, began to see him not just as a star, but as a man marked by tragedies and mistakes that haunted him. Catriona White's death revealed more than just a personal drama. It exposed the dark side of celebrity life, where private matters are exploited publicly. For CARREY, this episode was another reminder that fame does not shield anyone from pain or the consequences of past choices. He continued to work on his art, but with a new layer of introspection and melancholy. The glitz of the silver screen now contrasted sharply with the shadows that permeated his personal life, making his legacy even more complex and human. Jim Carrey's disillusionment with Hollywood became evident in a series of public statements in the late 2010s. He began speaking about the industry with a sarcastic, almost accusatory tone, exposing what he saw as the superficiality and hypocrisy that permeated the system. One of the most striking moments was his appearance at New York Fashion Week, where he declared that everything was meaningless and that he didn't believe in personalities or icons. For many, this was interpreted as an emotional breakdown, for others as an act of courage. Carrey drew attention for openly challenging Hollywood's values, criticizing the obsession with awards and status. During a speech at the Golden Globes, he mocked the pursuit of recognition by saying he dreamed of being a 3-time Golden Globe winner, because maybe then he would finally be enough. Though humorous, this statement carried real weight. He was exposing the futility of external validation he had sought in the past. Carrey was no longer the man who craved acceptance. He now saw Hollywood as a grand performance where life's real meaning was ignored. His message resonated because it was genuine. Carrey had already experienced the pinnacle of success and knew it didn't bring the peace or purpose many imagined. He began questioning the media's role and how celebrities were treated as modern-day gods. His interviews became provocative, blending philosophy, spirituality, and sharp critiques of the industry. While some saw this as rebellion, others labeled him unstable. Yet Carrey seemed more connected to himself than ever. This exposure of Hollywood's charade wasn't just an external critique, it was also a confession. Carrey admitted that for years he had played a character, himself. The Jim Carrey the world knew was, in fact, a construction molded by public expectations and the need to please. This revelation was both liberating and terrifying. If he wasn't the character he had created, then who was he? This was the question Carrey sought to answer as he dismantled his own public identity. The answer he found was simple yet profound. He was no one. For Carrey, true peace lay in abandoning the ego and attachment to external definitions. He began preaching detachment, encouraging people to look beyond the masks we all wear. This journey of self-discovery led Carrey further away from the industry, but also garnered admiration from many who saw him as an example of courage in questioning the system. In exposing Hollywood's facade, Carrey revealed something few dare to admit. Success doesn't guarantee happiness, and fame doesn't define who we are. His message resonated as a call for everyone to seek something more authentic, more meaningful. He became an enigma, a star rejecting the spotlight, a man searching for truth amid chaos. As Jim Carrey distanced himself from Hollywood's machinery, his philosophy of life began to take shape. He started advocating detachment as a path to freedom, questioning not only the values of the industry, but the very concept of identity. Carrey argued that the self we all construct is an illusion, a mask created to please others and survive in society. For him, the true essence of humanity wasn't in the relentless pursuit of acceptance, but in the ability to let go of the ego and embrace the simplicity of the present moment. This perspective of detachment resonated with his own journey. After decades of playing roles, not just on screen but in real life, Carrey began to see how fragile his notion of Jim Carrey really was. He described himself as a character, a product of Hollywood's and the public's expectations. His decision to deconstruct this identity was both liberating and challenging. Carrey recognized that his fame had been built on an illusory foundation and chose to use his platform to speak about what truly mattered, the essence of being. This shift became evident in his public appearances and interviews. In one, he famously declared, "Jim Carrey doesn't exist." To many, this sounded like a psychological breakdown, but to him, it was an awakening. He believed happiness lay beyond the concept of success or failure, beyond the labels of actor or comedian. For Carrey, life was a field of energy and constant motion, where each person was a part of something greater. By letting go of identity's constraints, he found a peace he had never experienced before. Carrey's detachment also led him to rethink his relationship with fame and materialism. He began stepping away from roles that didn't align with his new worldview, opting for projects that offered more meaning. He also dedicated himself to painting, an art form that, he said, allowed him to explore his inner world without the limitations imposed by scripts or external expectations. His art was raw, emotional, often abstract, a reflection of his journey of self-discovery. However, this transformation wasn't without criticism. Many accused him of running away from reality or being arrogant for rejecting the system that made him famous. Carrey, however, seemed immune to these opinions. He knew he was on a path few understood, but that it was necessary for his sanity and spiritual growth. He began to see life as a grand theater, where the real challenge was finding the courage to remove the mask and face the truth. His philosophy of detachment wasn't just an abstract discourse, but a real practice. Carrey became an example that, even at the height of success, it's possible to stop, reflect, and change direction. He proved that identity isn't a prison but a choice, something we can abandon and rebuild whenever necessary. By sharing his journey, he inspired others to question their own lives and seek freedom beyond what the world expects of us. Jim Carrey's legacy transcends his films and iconic roles. He's remembered not just as one of the greatest comedians of all time, but as a man who dared to question everything the world told him was important. His impact goes beyond the screen. He opened a dialogue about identity, fame, spirituality, and what it truly means to live. For Carrey, the greatest act of rebellion was admitting that success doesn't bring happiness, and that true wealth lies in finding peace within oneself. Carrey's journey was marked by extreme highs and lows. He went from living in a van with his family to becoming Hollywood's highest-paid actor. But unlike many who get lost in fame's glow, he used his success as a lens to examine himself and society. His courage in exposing the entertainment industry's emptiness was a subversive act few would dare to perform. In doing so, Carrey became more than a star. He became a thinker, a provocateur, and for many, an inspiration. Even while facing personal tragedies and controversies, Carrey remained true to his quest for authenticity. He wasn't content to be just a comedic icon. He wanted to explore dramatic roles, creative challenges, and eventually, his own spirituality. This courage to change, to continually reinvent himself, is part of what makes his legacy so unique. He proved that real art isn't about pleasing the audience, but expressing something genuine, even if it means discomfort or rejection. Today, Jim Carrey is remembered not just for his hilarious performances, but also for his unsettling wisdom. He's like that friend who makes you laugh and then drops a line that keeps you thinking for weeks. He used his fame to challenge conventional ideas about success and happiness, encouraging people to look beyond appearances and find meaning in their own lives. In speeches and interviews, his words resonate as reminders that we are more than our titles, achievements, or failures. For Carrey, what truly matters is the light we share with others. His legacy also extends to visual art, a passion he embraced as a way to explore emotions and ideas that couldn't be expressed through words or acting. His paintings are intense, often political, but always personal. They are an extension of his journey, a testament that creativity is a path to freedom. Even away from the spotlight, Carrey continues to create, not to please but to express the truth he has found within. Jim Carrey isn't just a figure of comedy or cinema, he's a living enigma. Through his journey, he taught us that external success can hide internal emptiness, but also that it's possible to question everything, detach from illusions, and find a new way of living. He became an example of transformation, courage, and a quest for meaning in a world obsessed with appearances. This story is just one piece, and one day perhaps we'll see the whole puzzle. If this made you think, like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us grow. Don't forget to share, After all, more voices mean more discoveries. If you've made it this far, it's because something in this mystery captivated you. But I bet you haven't seen everything yet. Click on the next videos now to continue your journey into the unknown. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe so you don't miss the next secrets I'm about to reveal. But be careful, once you step inside, there's no turning back.